I was mildly terrified, starting first, bright and early after night, a bunch of IT Mac admins being in a bar, and number two, all the great speakers yesterday. But when I didn't make this up, when I went to breakfast this morning, at our buffet, they had bananas with little messages on them. Mine says smile. So, I mean, you can't beat an omen like that. So everybody smile, and let's go. We have a very bold title here, Next Gen Apple Device Management. But if you've been doing this for a while, you probably remember back in I don't know if they're the good old days or the bad old days, when all we had was an agent on a device. MDM arrived, and it was hallelujah. This is going to do everything for us. It starts on iOS. They bring it to the Mac. And it didn't quite do everything we needed. There were pros and cons. Apps and books arrived. We're going to be able to get apps on devices. It's going to be amazing. And all the way along, they still need each of us to be able to get the job done, because those users on the device at the end of the day need to get their job done, right? That's really what our job is about. And that's what I want to focus on today. Like Tom mentioned yesterday, putting a title together for this talk is a challenge. You submit what you're going to talk about, and then you see what the other people are submitting. And I saw Tom talking OS updates. Thank God for him to talk about it, so I didn't have to go there. Rich talking about DDM and really going into the guts of that. But when we talk about this next generation of Apple device management, DDM is a big part of it. But I'm not going to go into those two pieces of it. Those guys did an amazing job. But what we're going to focus on today is compliance. And compliance is really becoming a big part of what we need to do this next generation. Over the last few years, what we have to do to secure devices and make sure they're secure has really gotten more and more and more critical. So we're going to dive into that. But the title is very bold. We're going to drill it down a little bit, focus on compliance and a great end-user experience when you're doing compliance. And we're going to talk a little bit about conditional access as well, how at the end of the day, if somebody's not compliant, you can cut them off and keep them out of your corporate database. Very quickly, though, I want to introduce the team that's here from Adigy. Michaela is a product manager on our team. She's responsible for everything on the Mac and our iOS devices. She would really love to hear the challenges you face. No matter what vendor you use or whatever else, stop by, have a chat with her. She wants to learn more and more about how you use self-service, identity providers on the device, all those kinds of things. Iggy is one of our solution architects. He helps our customers come on board. If you've got something you're struggling to get done on your devices, stop by the table, talk to Iggy. He's amazing. He also can do an amazing demo for you. And our newest member of the team, you need to stop by and ask him about his Uber experience on the way to the airport in Amsterdam on Monday. Terrifying, interesting, and you end up 4 hours late for the conference. But anyway, Matt's on our marketing team, and great guy. So let's jump in. Compliance. I want to talk about, first of all, what is compliance? You know, at the end of the day, compliance is about what is the state of a device. Is the device compliant or not? And what you're doing is you're measuring things like, is file vault enabled? What is the minimum operating system on it? You may be measuring what is the maximum operating system on it, because you don't want people to go forward quite yet. We'll talk about a specific use case on that. But these are the sorts of things you want to understand about a device before you grant it access to what you're going to be working on. So why is compliance important? One of the things we talk about at Adigy a lot when we get caught up in talking about features is we like to come back to what is a problem we're trying to solve. And with compliance, really the problem we're trying to solve is, are things in a known state before they attach to your networks and before they access your corporate assets and resources? You're not only trying to protect those, but again, you're also trying to protect that user on the device, right? You know, we do training for users around phishing and all these different sorts of things, and not fishing. Man, the seafood here is amazing too, speaking of fishing, but different kind, not important. So anyway, what is a compliance benchmark? So now you think about my compliance can be very simple. Is file vault on? Have I got hard passwords and things like that? But there are actually benchmarks that are put out by industry leaders, two of which are in the United States, NIST and CIS. And what they do is they spend a ton of time doing a lot of research around what are cyber attacks, what's going on in the world in terms of what we need to secure. They're also researching devices, where are things that could potentially go wrong. And they put together a list of things for different devices. Here's a checklist of things that you can do to make sure this device is secure. For instance, CIS Level 1 has, for macOS 14, has 84 rules that you can put in place. You think about, I got to manage 84 rules. We're going to show you how we can make that simple for you. Because again, if this isn't simple for you to do and understandable, it's not going to get done. But it goes well beyond the United States. All these groups are working very closely together. And by the way, you can Google on any of these terms if you want more information, and I've also got links at the end of the presentation to share, and we can share this presentation to get you more. But there's a European Agency for Cybersecurity, Cyber Essentials in the UK, which this sentence really caught my eye, an effective government-backed scheme that will help you to protect your operation. And when I see effective and government-backed, is this a catch-22? I'm not sure. Anyway, they promise it to be both of those. So, and finally, ISO, 2 standards to really take a look at, 27001, 27002. One lays out what is a good standard for being secure. 002 talks more about how to implement it. You can do a deep dive on those if you want, but again, if you go back to the benchmarks that we're going to talk about, it's simple to be able to apply those. But getting a base understanding of what it is very important. So, I have a survey for all of you. And again, I know it's shortly after 9 a.m. We were shooting pool last night. I had a beer, at least one. I assume some other people may have as well. So this is to wake everybody up. So does your organization have a compliance policy in place today for your Apple devices? That's good. I love to see that. So if you're in a mixed environment, is there a compliance policy for the devices that are non-Apple, but no compliance policy on the Apple side? Does anybody face that situation? There are a few hands in the room, and in this audience, I wouldn't expect it as much because it's very Apple-focused. One of the things that we see so often is we're a Windows shop, we've got the small batch of Macs. Macs are inherently safe, I don't have to worry about them. But you think about compliance is about your whole organization. You may be buying insurance, cyber insurance, and there's guarantees of what you're doing to secure those machines. If the Apple devices don't have compliance, why? It's something to really think hard about, and I'd encourage you to do it. So, for those of you who don't have either one, are you planning to roll out a compliance policy? I always end up looking at my next slide as opposed to the current slide, so I'm one behind, I apologize. Are you planning to roll out a compliance policy in the next 3 months if you don't have one today? In the next 6 months? All right, so let's talk after. I'll be curious, after we're done with this talk, if you change it, like, oh, we absolutely are, because we're going to make it simple. So, what a compliance policy is based on, though, again, just goes to the layers of security across the device. I'm just going to run through those very quickly. Layer 1, the mythical red dot. I put this in to see if I could make Tom twinge this morning. I know he hates that. But again, at the beginning of the day, the first thing you have to ensure is, am I on the right operating system? And as you heard yesterday, ADE, they're adding the capability to be able to specify a minimum operating system before you finish ADE. So you can push someone to Monterey before you allow them to get to that point where they can get signed into that machine the first time. I think that's an amazing addition. The next part of it is our security controls. That's building our compliance policy, those sorts of things. The third layer of this is making this visible to the end user. This is critically important, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on why it's important. It can be a little counterintuitive. And finally, conditional access. I don't have much time to talk about that one today, but if you'd like to see how we add conditional access on top of all this, we'd be happy to give you a demo back at the table. And by the way, if I forget, that TV on our table, we're giving it away because it was too expensive to ship here, so we bought it, and we don't want to ship it home. But it can be yours if you stop by. Anyway, practical. All right, so how do we do this? First, we start with building a compliance plan. Where does that plan come from? How many of you have had to buy cyber insurance in the last, well, anytime recently? Are you being forced into that situation? Just a few. In the US at least, and us as an MDM, it's really required. And we're hearing from more and more of our customers that it's being required for the businesses they're in. Customers are asking them, do you have cyber insurance before you go forward? And the first thing a cyber insurance company says when they come in is, do you have a compliance policy? And if not, they're going to talk to you to help you build it. They'll actually partner with you. But the other thing to take a look at is, what is the industry you're in? What are your requirements? Are you finance? Are you education? They vary across them. One benchmark does not meet the needs for everybody. You need to understand what you're doing, what are your risks. Even across different departments, you might want to have a little bit of a different compliance standpoint. The finance team, maybe you're more strict. Maybe the kiosks at the front desk, not quite as strict, or maybe more strict. Once you get this plan put together, you build your benchmark, you deploy it, how are you going to monitor it? How are you going to know if a device is no longer compliant? If it's not compliant, what are you going to do about it? You know, it's easy to roll out, we have a compliance plan, there's all this, and all of a sudden 1,000 help desk tickets come in and you're like, nobody can access anything, what am I going to do? So you want to make sure you're thinking through this whole thing as you're putting it together. It's not just choosing the benchmark, deploying it, and sitting back and relaxing. But again, you all know that nothing in this world is that simple, right? Now, how do you remediate? Again, if maybe an update comes out from Apple. I don't know if you've ever been surprised when that's happened and something broke or something new appeared, but something unexpected appears, right? And it's like, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to respond to it? And again, some of the MDM vendors are helping to make this simple. But again, you can build this yourself, but these are the things you need to be thinking about as you're putting it together. And finally, how are you going to keep up with the benchmarks? They change. The benchmark for Sonoma appeared the Wednesday before Sonoma shipped. At Adigy, we actually monitor the CIS and the NIST repositories. There's a GitHub repository for changes. So we see it when it appears. We're able then to get it put into the product right away so you're able to add it. And I'll show you how we do that in a minute. But again, if you're going to do this yourself, how are you going to stay on top of it? How are you going to know when rules change so you don't miss something or fall behind or remediation changes? So, Adigy benchmarks and rules. So, when you want to use Adigy, I'm gonna get fairly Adigy specific now. So, this is where you get really excited and you're like, wow, this is an amazing product, right? Well, hopefully some of that. Anyway, with Adigy, we've got the built-in benchmarks for CIS level 1 and NIST level 3. NIST level 3 is very strict. CIS level 1 is a wonderful baseline to be able to start with. Again, it's got 84, I think it's about 84 rules for macOS Sonoma. They're available for iOS as well. So you can just choose that right off the shelf, take this and apply it. But it's also easy to assign. In Adigy, when you get devices enrolled, you're able to pick your benchmark and say assign it to these devices, and it rolls out to those devices. Just takes a couple of minutes. But where it gets interesting is, can you customize the benchmark? There's some things in benchmarks that may not be right for you, or you may want to extend them. You may have a particular benchmark. I'm going to use our engineering team as an example, where, for instance, I actually don't want them to move ahead to Sonoma on the first 30 days. One of the concerns we have is our engineering team. We all run on Macs. We're building our products on Macs, but those are very complex environments. We're running web servers, database servers, different versions of different compilers. We've got Python, we've got Go, we've got Swift, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. During the rollout of Sonoma, we are testing our environments to make sure they're going to work. But on the day Sonoma ships, once in a while it's happened something new slips into that last release and something breaks. The other thing sometimes we face is it's not really a problem with Sonoma, but our vendor isn't ready on the day Sonoma ships, which in this room breaks our heart because it's like, how can you not be ready? They've had betas for 3.5 months. But anyway, it happens. So we're going to hold them back. So again, we can customize our benchmarks, do something special for engineering, make sure they're in this place. Because again, depending on the team, if all of our engineers are down for 2 or 3 days because of a broken tool, that's hugely expensive. It also puts us at big risk. What if something comes up that we need to respond to and our engineers' machines are down? Just some things to think about, whether it's your finance department or it's your high school class the week of finals, et cetera, et cetera. So it's critical. You can layer in your own custom rules as well. In Antigy, again, in all the MDM products, right, you've got access to all the characteristics of a machine. So if you want to make a decision based on, I don't know, hard disk space, bad example, but you could set your own custom rule that if the hard disk space is getting below a particular level, they're going to come out of compliance because perhaps I can't cache downloads for software updates. So you're able to bend and configure the rules in a manner that makes sense for you. So in Antigy, this is two of the benchmarks that we include out of the box. On this side, you've got CIS for macOS 14, 89 rules. I was 5 short, but you can see a list. When you expand those, you actually get to see what we're interrogating on the machine. This information is actually all pulled from the CIS and the NIST repositories, GitHubs. When we get them in, we actually evaluate them, we test them. Sometimes there's some things in the scripts that don't necessarily work quite correctly, and we have to correct those before we put them out. But you can dig into these to do it. So from there, in Antigy, I opened up the CIS level 1, and I said, I've got a number of policies that I want to apply this compliance to. I wanted to make sure my 2 breweries absolutely have compliance, because if they can't serve me beer at 4 o'clock when they open, I'm going to be really sad. And the product team, I never trust product teams. I used to lead them. I know who they are. Not trustworthy people. They always say, yeah, we're going to put that in the product in 30 days. Yeah, it's going to be 45 days, I can guarantee it, because my engineering team was delayed drinking beer at the brewery. Anyway, but again, this is how you make the assignments very simply. You can click it. That compliance policy is going to go out to all the machines that are associated with those policies. And again, we can give you a better demo on this and go into details on it. But here's an example of a M2 device with Sonoma on it, and you can see where the little hand is, compliance is a pass. I can actually click on that pass, and I'm going to get a full list of rules that say it passed this one, it passed this one, it passed this one. If it had not passed, like this next slide, you can see I've got one, it's in a fail state right now. Enforce file vault is red. Now, a little note, if you're using CIS level 1, there's a little bit of a trap. The way the specification is written, it says enforce file vault, which to me implies turn file vault on that machine. So when you deploy this compliance policy, we also have remediation that goes. The rule is actually, if file vault is turned on, you can't turn it off. So there's 2 parts to it. One, file vault must be on, and the user can't turn it off. So unless you go in and you build the turn file vault on your MDM profile, push it to the device, and the user turns it on, this is always going to fail. I did sit and scratch my head until I talked to the PM behind this, and he goes, you have to enable file vault yourself as an administrator, then the user has to turn it on, and away you go. So be aware if you're using that one. Now, this is a single device view, so perhaps this is a use case where you got a ticket in from a user, like my machine's out of compliance, what do I do? You look at this, you go, turn file vault on, good to go. Now, that's great, but we all know our fleets are more than one device. So what we also have is a way you can either look at a rule to see all the machines that are in and out of compliance for that individual rule, or see all the machines that are in and out of compliance, and then drill back in to figure out what the rule set is. We've also got methods to be able to generate a report, because again, one of the things with compliance is typically you want to do reporting to this. Maybe you're pushing this information in if you're using like a Splunk, or you just need to do reporting to your security department on a monthly basis. What happened with our compliance? Did we have devices go out? Why did they go out? Why did they come back in? So you can go high level, you can go individual device, you can assign them very simply. Now, this is not a phishing attempt. I know we're in a compliance and we're talking about security, but this actually links to our KB that is the beginning of explaining how compliance works in Antigy if you want to take a look at it. Now, the other thing I want to talk about very quickly is surfacing this information to your end users. Those of you who've got compliance in place, do you do training for your users also in terms of phishing training? Do you have videos they need to watch on a regular basis? This is why we do compliance. This is why we do these sorts of things. I see a few hands. One of the things that you can do to benefit yourselves, and again, we all need one more thing to do, right? Is train your users about what's happening and why you're doing it. What I find is if I can tell people, I'm going to make sure your machine is compliant, and I walk away, they're like, this guy's getting in the way of me doing my job. If I go in and I say, we need to do compliance because it's going to help you be safe, it's going to protect our corporate assets, it's going to hopefully help keep our name out of the news in a negative way, here's how you can participate, here's how you can know what's going on, here's when you can ask me questions, they're much more willing to engage and know what's going on. So what we've done is, this is in our self-service product. This is actually this machine, my production machine. And we're running a subset of CIS level 1 internally at Adigy. I don't know why our ops team trusts me so much. I think I'd be on the top one. But anyway, you can see I'm compliant right now. I've got all greens. In the lower right, you can see where it says compliant. I can also click the button that says check status. With Adigy's compliance, not only do we put out the test, but we also can put out remediation. So if something goes out of compliance, we've got the scripting or the delivery of the MDM profiles to put it back in compliance. So maybe a user changes setting on their machine. It goes out of compliance. They can look and go, I'm out of compliance. They check again, it goes back into compliance automatically. Now, this next slide is amazing. This is what happens when you let me build slide decks. So forgive me. But what we're going to be looking at is the lower left-hand corner, stage right, of what might appear here. Now, the top one is, if you're using Microsoft Conditional Access, the first time you log in, you actually have to register with Intune. This is where they come in. Our self-service opens when that user logs in the first time. They click Register Device. Intune opens up, and they do a login to Office. That machine is now registered with Intune. Now, Adigy's compliance is talking to Intune. Microsoft put in an amazing version 2 of their compliance API earlier this year, late last year. And it's very easy for us. We send them a true or false. This device is compliant or not compliant, and then they can let you access corporate resources, or they can block those corporate resources. Love to talk to other IDB providers, if there were any in the room, about conditional access on those as well. You know, maybe over a beer. Anyway, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is if a device does go out of compliance, we can stop it from accessing those kinds of things. One thing I want to make note of, I only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to hurry here. Compliance can be broader than a device. You can bring a user into your compliance as well. Has a user who's on a device completed the necessary cyber training that you want them to complete? Have they gone through the training that explains what they're about to see here? If they have not, make that device non-compliant until they complete that training. It's bringing the hammer, but at the end of the day, you're protecting the environment. Something to consider as you put this together. So again, this is just a little bit more of what it kind of looks like as you're connecting into Intune. We can get you a much better demo of that. So again, at the end of the day, system updates via MDM. Wow, that slide just jumps right ahead to the good stuff. Giveaway of a 32-inch Samsung TV that we don't want to carry back to the United States. Please, please come and win it as we go by. Check us out at adigy.com. My email is tough, john@adigy.com. See us at the back table. Here are the list of resources. So we'll get this slide deck out here. And when I was in San Diego a year and a half ago, they have a banana boat that comes from South America and leaves bananas for North America, and it's painted yellow. And the banana joke, I couldn't leave this out. It's not my photo, but I don't know how else you're going to talk here. So anyway, thank you.